Tuesday on NBC. Jimmy Fallon and Bozoma St. John host the highly anticipated new competition show.
I hired 10 creatives from all walks of life. They will be battling it out to see who can impress the world's biggest brands.
This is a huge opportunity.
This is the battle for the next big idea.
This is not play.
We're spending millions of dollars.
I'm so excited to embark on this adventure with all of you.
May the best idea win!
On Brand with Jimmy Fallon. Series premiere Tuesday on NBC.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
I'm sorry about that, everybody. Kieran caught me out with a totally unexpected visual joke. That's very, very funny. He knows that I normally glance down because he makes me laugh, so I try not to see what he's doing to start the show to make me laugh. And then I glanced up and he was hiding behind a Waitrose food magazine. That's genuinely made me laugh. Hello and welcome to the...
Not just a Waitrose, it's the bacon brie and blueberry toasty that they have on the front cover, which is having to be tried out. Of course, possibly the most Waitrose thing ever.
No, I'll give you bacon and brie in a sandwich. That's I was in. It's a terrible middle class start to the show, to a pod that we haven't even said hello to. That people don't even know what they're listening to. Anybody who's wandered into this accidentally will be thinking, "Hang on a second, this is not what I was recommended." Marks and Spencer said they were putting out the Christmas catalogues in Marks and Spencer, but I can't think about Christmas until the 1st of October. So I had to be iron-willed and resist picking up the Christmas catalogue in Marks and Spencer's. But yeah, brie and bacon. Hello, shall we say hello? Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire, who, as you can tell, are positively giddy on this fine Monday morning, partly because autumn has arrived in Norbury. We've got actual mists and mellow fruitfulness out the back here. All I can see is an angry cat's eyes at the back of the garden. She tries to navigate her way home. And also, Kieran, because let's face it, we did discuss not mentioning football at all because we thought that would be a mature thing. But all I will say is, if this pod goes on for another 95 minutes, there may well be excitement at the end of it. Basically,
yes.
It's just a shame that producer guy listens to this for the purposes of editing, some of which he will have already done, I imagine, with this opening. But so 2 out of 3 of our teams having fantastic wins on Saturday was that Arne Slot's not as cheerful as he looks on telly when Liverpool are winning. I'm amazed he could comment on the game at all, as he spent most of it berating the assistant referee about this, that and the other. But yeah, great win for you. Do you know what, Danny? Not a football pod, but Danny Welbeck, I'd run him out in the England squad. He's a natural finisher, that boy, isn't he?
Yes. Yes, magnificent, and right in front of the away end as well for all 3 goals. So very good.
Yeah, and also hats off to our listeners. We did have some sound issues on the last pod.
Yes, that's my fault. Sorry.
It did please me that so many of our listeners went to Norman Collier for the every now and again. Producer guy says we do have some listeners. I said, well, they don't get in touch with us if they are. Most of the ones who get in touch with us have the same frame of reference that we have. It's questions day, Kieran. So let's get on with the questions because we got some good ones. And we start with a good old-fashioned one club question, Kieran, and it comes from Simon Betts. And Simon says, as a Norwich fan, I'm interested to hear your views on the takeover by Mark Atanasio. What is his record in sport? What does it mean for the finances of the club? Does this mean investment in the squad will follow? And also, what is your assessment of the Delia years from a business perspective?
Right. Mark Atanasio is a successful businessman. He has had some involvement in US sport. As far as his relationship with Norwich City is concerned, I think for quite a few years, Norwich have been operating on an even keel basis. And the reason for that is that our Delia has now reached a stage where she's got a limited opportunity to put money into the club because she's sort of moved into a sort of more senior part of her career, and there are other TV chefs around and so on. So the money that she generates is lower than it used to be. But she is Norwich through and through. I think what Mark Atanasio has done, he's already lent the club £60 million, and it's noticeable that
60 million.
60, yeah.
Wow,
so
okay.
he is putting money into the club. I think it's moving away from perhaps being a sustainable club under Delia to one which is willing to extend itself a bit further as far as investing in players is concerned. And that's what gets fans excited. I absolutely understand that. What his long-term plans are, we will have to wait and see. But has there been investment in the squad? Yes, there has been. Will there continue to be? That comes down to the owner. And once a club starts to lose money, and Norwich have lost money for the last couple of years, and I'm expecting their accounts to come out fairly soon, by the way, because they are a PLC, they are a public limited company, and that's puts slightly more onerous obligations on you in terms of communicating with the public. So I do anticipate something to come out relatively soon, and they're also incredibly professional. I've met the guys at Norwich, and I've been very impressed by them. I expect the club to continue to make losses. That's not a problem until it becomes a problem, because as one of the many glib sayings I have in the world of football finance, football clubs don't go bust, owners do. So, club losing money isn't a problem until Mark Atanasio is a problem. There's no evidence that he has any problems. He seems to be very, very successful in his own right. So I don't anticipate that. But if we contrast that with what we've seen at some other clubs recently, it's when the owner gets into trouble. If the owner sneezes, the football club catches pneumonia. And that's always my concern. But then, though that comment could apply to probably 80 plus teams in the football pyramid, including Premier League teams. So I think they're in a solid position. They get fantastic crowds. They've got a really loyal fan base. Carrow Road is a good, solid 30,000 seater stadium, which will be full or almost full for this season. They don't rip off the fans in terms of prices. So I think they are a solid club, and you expect them to be competitive as far as the Championship is concerned. They've struggled a wee bit when being promoted, and of course this season there's the derby times two, which is always a feisty affair.
Yeah, it's always one of those that's overlooked in the many books that are written every year about derbies around the world, but it's a very feisty affair. I mean, Norwich is always a good away ground to go to because it's such a beautiful city in the first place. Briefly though, Kieran, the Simon Betts question, if you change the word from a business perspective to a financial perspective about Delia, I think you probably get a different answer, because from a business perspective, I would argue that PR-wise, she and her husband were fantastic for Norwich City, because they generated this sort of welcoming, decent community club image, which I think went down well with a lot of people. And also, of course, the best half-time speech ever from a club owner, which is still one of my most amazing things I've seen live on a football pitch. So it's, and I think as well, I don't know how big Mark Atanasio's ego is. But I think it'll be a long time before people disassociate Delia from Norwich City Football Club. Basically, when most people talk about Norwich, they're going to be talking about Delia rather than Mark. Anyway, Ben Archer has a question about a team recently under new ownership as well. Ben Archer says, I was listening to an interview with Michael Flynn when he was still Cheltenham town manager. He said that the reason why the club didn't have a transfer budget is because they need to allocate extra funds to wages, because free agents will ask for a higher wage compared to a player who has a transfer fee attached. Is this the case, or is this an excuse being parroted by clubs with minimal budgets?
I would say, Ben, it's not just clubs with minimal budgets that take this into consideration. If you take a look at the career, for example, of Ibrahimovic, he sort of specialised towards having sort of 1 and 2 year contracts towards sort of the end of his career, and he would move from club to club, and he would get a big signing on fee. We saw in the case of Kylian Mbappe, he ran down his contract at PSG, and that allowed him to command much higher wages at Real Madrid, as well as a huge signing on fee. So certainly when we have conversations with people connected to clubs, and I talk to the finance guys, it is very much a case of we have a playing budget, and the playing budget is wages plus amortization. So if we can focus more, for every £100,000 saved in terms of transfer fees, that's £100,000 that goes into the wages budget. So I think as far as Michael Flynn's comments are concerned, that they do have some validity. I've taken a look at Cheltenham Town's most recent accounts, and Cheltenham, I think they spent £5,000 on players in season 23-24. Their total cost of the squad was £190,000. I'll be honest, Ben, but by League Two standards, that's pretty mid-table. That's actually quite decent. There are 5 or 6 clubs who have a zero complete transfer spend, as far as not just players signed for this season, but the whole cost of the squad put together. And it's a function of being in the lower leagues and having to make ends meet. And also, there is more difficulty from a selling club's point of view in extracting funds when you're trying to sign a player or sell a player to a League Two club. I think the sellers are more aware. So budgets are very low in League Two. Managers are under stress. Owners are under stress. The average losses in League Two are still hundreds of thousands of pounds a year. And if you're losing £10,000-12,000 a week, then the owner is probably going to say, I'm not getting a lot of glory out of this, because we've got Cheltenham on a Tuesday night, and that's no disrespect to Cheltenham or the club that's doing the hosting. So why should I put in more money into the budget? So that's where we are. It is a fair comment, though, that came from Michael Flynn, is that you look at a holistic approach to your overall budget. And that's why we see some clubs going down the route of just using loan players, Bodmans, free transfers, and players generated through the academy and so on.
Cheltenham have got a relatively wealthy new owner, Kieran, but I must say I'm quite surprised by that figure, even allowing for the massive discrepancy between the wealth of the Premier League and the wealth of League Two. To hear that £190,000 squad spend is mid-table in League Two. I would have thought, even at that level, I would have thought you were looking at £3-4 million, £5 million transfer budgets, but clearly not. No,
and this is one of the debates I have with some of the critics of women's football. They say, we've just had the first £1 million signing in the women's game. Well, that's pathetic compared to the men's game and so on. Well, I can assure you that a £1 million signing would actually break the transfer record for probably half of the clubs in the EFL. So don't be so sniffy and sneery about it. There are plenty of clubs that are operating on a single thousands or just a few tens of thousands as far as signings are concerned, and that's the nature of the beast.
And would also explain historically why Andy Holt at Accrington was so sniffy about Salford, with the amount of money that Salford was spending on players and wages at that level.
Yes, and we've seen changes at Salford itself recently, because in defence of Salford, and I'm not taking sides in this, it's come from an environment where they were getting crowds measured in the few hundreds to one which is now trying to get measured in the sort of low thousands. It looks like Nicky Butt, Paul Scholes, I think Phil Neville have pulled out, and it's now sort of Gary and David Beckham's come in with some of his support, and they're having a good season. Yeah, it has to be said. Poor old Cheltenham. I had a look at the League Two table this morning.
Yeah.
They've scored the fewest goals. They've conceded the most goals. To have both of those against you isn't looking too healthy. And even if you do have new owners, you've got to have some knowledge of the industry, because football is unique. The industry is littered with people with good intentions who have been successful in other aspects of their professional careers, but you're dealing with something which is like no other.
Yeah. Our next question, Kieran, got me quite excited initially. It comes from Ali Lance. Ali Lance says, my question revolves around a club. Let's call them Club X. Now, normally, that's where I get excited, because when somebody says, let's call them Club X, you think, this is going to be salacious. This is going to be verging on litigation. Turns out, less litigation, more complications. This is for you, Kieran, this would be an easy one to answer, but I had to stop and have a cup of tea halfway through reading this initially. So Ali says, let's say Club X have a lot of players signed on long contracts. Does there come a point in such a scenario that Club X cannot actually afford to sell players because of the impact it could have on PSR? Say Club X bought a player for £80 million on an 8-year contract, so amortised at £10 million a year. But after 2 years, a new manager comes in. Oh, it can't be Chelsea then. After 2 years, a new manager comes in and doesn't want this player. However, nobody will buy it for more than £20 million given their wages. Presumably, if Club X sell, they would then have to take an immediate £40 million write-down, representing the difference between the net book value after 2 years of amortisation and the resale value, and that £40 million would have an impact on PSR.
You are absolutely correct there, Ali. Although we're about to have a follow-up question, which will deal with some certain other aspects to this. The long-term contract issue has short-term benefits, because it certainly does reduce your amortisation charge. And Chelsea managed to get quite a few of these transfers over the line before UEFA and the Premier League both said, oh, this is a way of circumventing PSR. I'm no fan of Chelsea. And to say that is putting it mildly is putting it very mildly. But on this particular issue, I actually have a lot of sympathy for them. My view is that if they're willing to take the risk of employing somebody for 8 years, and that player has a loss of form, that player has injury, which has a huge impact upon their career, and so on, then they're on the hook for that player's wages for 8 years. So, if they then sign subsequent players, they're still, with such and such who's been here 5 years, he's not been seen in the car park for 3 of them. And of course, we've got the legendary Winston Bogart as well, who joined the club and effectively stank the place out and was collecting his money for getting across. I think he caught 2 flights across a week from Amsterdam, collected his wages, signed on at the club, and went home because the manager said, "I don't want anything to do with you." Yeah. So there are implications when the player is sold, because profit from a playing point of view is, as Ali was saying, it's the book value of the player. Now, if that player who'd been signed for £80 million was on a 5-year contract. 80 divided by 5 is 16. So you're saving yourselves £6 million a year. But when it comes to selling the player, you're £6 million a year worse off. So it is swings and roundabouts, but it does give you that short-term boost as far as PSR is concerned. It therefore does mean, and I've certainly seen this at a variety of clubs, when you say, well, I'm amazed he's still around.
Yeah.
He's around because he's worth less than his book value, and the clubs don't want to take the hit.
If you've shopped online, chances are you've bought from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? That's Shopify. And there's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your business. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/promo. Go to shopify.com/promo.
Hey business owners, we know you know the importance of maximizing every dollar. With the Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business American Express card, you can make your expenses work just as hard as you. From afternoon coffee runs to stocking office supplies and even team dinners, you can earn miles on all your business expenses. Plus, you can earn 125,000 bonus miles for a limited time through October 29th. The Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business Card. If you travel, you know. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply. Offer ends October 29th, 2025.
I have to say, Kieran, apart from if I'm in a pub, even on Saturday before the Palace game, the sentence I use most is, yes, I'd love a pint of Guinness, thank you very much. The sentence I use second most, everywhere I go, is Chelsea have done absolutely nothing wrong. Because there is an obsession with non-Chelsea fans at the moment about Chelsea. And you just have to keep saying to them, they're playing perfectly within all. As you say, they're taking a risk long term, but it's a perfectly legal, lawful, valid risk. As they're not breaking any rules, they're not bending any rules. They're working within the framework as it exists at the moment.
That's right. If you've got an issue, take it up with the people that devise the rules.
Absolutely so. So, as you say, there's I'm not going to insult Richard McKenna by saying this is a follow-up question, because it's a perfectly valid question.
No.
In its own right, and it's only a follow-up question because producer Guy decided it was going to go there. It probably wasn't concentrating because of the shocking 3-1 defeat at Brentford, while your team and my team were doing particularly well. I actually got cross yesterday because we went down from second to third. I actually found myself texting Arsenal fans, there's something, as Mark Steele said on Saturday, we've broken physics. So Richard McKenna said, as has been discussed many times, clubs spread the cost of a player registration over the length of a contract, being their amortisation policy. However, clubs are also required to review such players' registration for impairment. After reviewing the accounts of a few football clubs, including Club X, clubs seem to consider, says Richard, people are reviewing the accounts of football clubs because of you, Kieran. No. Clubs seem to consider that future cash flows of the first team squad as a whole, the cash generating unit, says Richard, when considering impairment. So when a player is not part of a first team squad, what basis do the clubs use? Will Chelsea be required to impair all players who are not part of the first team squad to nil?
Well, Richard, not necessarily to nil, but you might have to consider them on a case-by-case basis. And I think this raises two issues. First of all, I have seen clubs such as Chelsea have significant write-downs historically. Now, at the time, I thought, I might have chosen to go down that route myself. If a football club has lost £50 million over 3 years and PSR says you can lose 105, can you see to a certain extent you've wasted some of your potential PSR? So what some clubs have done, in my opinion, and I'm not going to name those clubs, they've said, player X, he's a bit bobbins, isn't he? And there is no club that has got a 100% successful player recruitment model. And some clubs have are better than others. But what we could therefore do is to say, on an individual basis, that player's value has gone down. And what you do is that you say, right, let's take a £30 million hit on that player. We're still within PSR, and that means that the future amortization reduces. If we go back to Ali's example, let's say that Chelsea bought a player for 80 million on an 8-year contract. After 2 years, they say we only think he's worth 20 million. He's in the books at 60. You then value him at 20. You take a £40 million hit. You can take a 40 million. You can afford to take a £40 million hit, and you say, right, his value is now 20 million. He's still got 6 years left in his contract. The amortization goes through. So there is certainly a way to have. I think the technical phrase we use in accounting is fun and games with numbers to inflate or deflate as necessary. Are accountants suitably qualified to say whether an individual football player has gone down in value or not? No, they're not. So therefore, what they do, they'd rely on the football club to say, well, the director of football thinks their value has gone down, the manager's gone down, we've only had offers of 20 million for this player, so that's further evidence. And you'll get somebody, especially if you're an MCO, you can always get somebody to put in a suitable value. So that's where we are. But going back to what Richard has said, let's take the case of Chelsea and the ongoing issue with Mudryk, who has not been in the squad. He has been accused of things. He is saying, I'm not guilty, and so on. I think we're waiting the B sample results to come out. If he is found guilty and if he is given a long ban from football, then his value becomes effectively zero. Or they might say, well, we could still say, let's say it's a 2-year ban. He'll still have 2 years left in his contract. Let's reduce his value to 10 million. So certainly players who are not in the first team squad, you can reduce their value on an individual basis. What Richard also made reference to, which I think is a valid point, is something called a CGU, a cash generating unit. And this really is accounting nerd territory. What you say is that we can't value Caicedo as an individual asset of Chelsea. We can't value Cucurella. I valued Cucurella using another word beginning with C for 90 minutes. And as you know, Kevin, I don't swear.
No, I very rarely heard you use the word crap, Kieran, which yes. I assume is the word you're thinking of. Yes, yeah.
Absolutely.
You don't swear a lot, actually, Kieran, I have to say, for a South Londoner.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get the feeling sometimes you don't like other people swearing around you, Kieran, either.
No. I grew up sort of at the Two Eagles, which was down the end of our road, and it was a fairly, Bermondsey Way was quite rough and ready. So I had no issue.
It was then, Kieran. It's probably a beard shaving outfit now. I imagine
it's quite frightening.
Yeah, it'll be either that or it sells those square boots that the young hipsters seem to like so much with those trousers that don't quite reach the. I don't like a trouser that doesn't reach the ankle, Kieran.
I did accuse Mark Cucurella of being a pound shop Ross Noble on Saturday afternoon.
I don't think Cucurella would understand either of those. The idea of Cucurella, he may well know who Ross Noble is, but pound shop's going to have to be explained to him, isn't it?
I suspect he doesn't shop there. Yes. So what you do is, instead of valuing the individual players, you say, well, what do we think is the total value of the squad for insurance purposes? Is it greater or less than the value in the books? And then this thing called an impairment review is, if it's worth less than the book value, you'll put through a cost. And we have seen that happen historically. I've always been a little bit suspicious, but because my view of football finance has become quite jaundiced over the years. That's why I think clubs use it to their benefit.
I like the idea of fun and games with numbers, though. Hosted by the new CBeebies series, Fun and Games with Numbers, hosted by Uncle Kieran Maguire. Just briefly, you mentioned player recruitment. I won't name the player. I did a TV show on Friday with an ex-centre-back of some repute, who then became a coach and manager for a very brief time. And I was explaining to him my what I thought was quite a clever theory about how it was that Palace had managed to adapt to 3 at the back, a system we never played before, and how it was that Man United hadn't managed to. And basically he looked at me and he nodded politely and went, "No, you've just got 3 better players than they have." Basically,
that's a good alternative.
He said it probably would work if they bought 3 players who could play at 3 at the back.
Yes.
Oh, okay, I see. Our last 2 questions take us into probably my favourite territory, Kieran. We're going into it's not reach around. I keep saying reach around, but it's not reach around.
Very careful.
I just love the fact that both these people have different words for what is different. So the first one is Alex Dobson. And Alex says, I have a question to add to the growing list of PNS workarounds. Workarounds, that's the word. If a club sold a player who had a sell-on clause from the club they had bought the player from, how does this get accounted for in regards to amortisation and profit on disposals of player registrations? Can the selling club book the full amount they made as a profit against the amortisation cost, not including the sell-on fee?
Hi, Alex. I think you would have to include the sell-on fee, because what you do is that when you calculate the profit, you look at the sale proceeds, and the sale proceeds would be the net proceeds that is due to the club. So let's say that we bought a player for £20 million. There's a 10% sell-on, and we sold that player for 60. So the sell-on clause is always in respect of profit. So you say, right, we would have £40 million worth of profit, of which 10% goes to the club in receipt of the sell-on. So as far as we're concerned in the calculations, the sale price of the player is 56 for us. Compare that to the book value, and that's how you would work out your profit. So unfortunately, you can't sort of hide that sell-on fee elsewhere.
Okay. So the last one comes from Komotso Mabalani. I hope I pronounced that right, Komotso. And Komotso Mabalani says, I have a question for the weekly Find the Loophole slot on the podcast, which it made me chuckle quite a lot. I like the fact that Alex went, well, let's go for workaround. Yeah, that seems professional. And Komotso's gone straight for Find the Loophole. And again, as I said last week, Kieran, 6 years in, and our listeners are still finding different ways to ask us about the PSR rules, which either show that they're working really well or they're not fit for purpose. And I don't know which it is. But Komotso says, with the current rules in place, suppose Club A and Club B are facing PSR trouble in the near future. And Club A has a promising youngster they could sell for pure profit, but want to keep him and loan him out instead. What would stop Club A from selling their youngster to Club B for, let's say, £25 million with a buyback clause of £25 million after a year? So Club A records £25 million of pure profit. Club B only records a cost equal to the first year amortisation value of £5 million. Then a year later, Club A buys back the player who now has a book value of £20 million, and Club B records a profit of £5 million. Both clubs record a combined £30 million profit without actually paying anything. Now, the reason I'm so interested to hear your answer on this, Kieran, is that I'll be honest enough to admit that this is one of the first Find the Loopholes that I actually went, oh, that makes sense. Because the others are normally too complicated for me, or there's such pub conversations that they clearly can't work. But I mean, it does sort of imply that the two Club A and Club B could sell him back to each other every year for 5 years. But then that means Club A would be Watford and Club B would be Udinese, and that's clearly not true. But I mean, the first idea seems eminently sensible.
It does have some merit. If the two clubs are independent, I think it's fair to say that there would have to be some form of collusion between the club owners.
Right, can I stop you there, Kieran? When you say independent, does that imply that if they're both part of the same multi-club organisation?
No, I'm operating in an MCO. Yes, you could do this. Yeah, in an MCO you can do whatever you want, but MCOs are sort of a cheat code when it comes to PSR, in my view, and we have seen clubs taking it. But let's say that we have got two clubs with, in theory, owners who have got absolutely nothing to do with each other. And they just happen to have a few transactions between each club, but we can't say who they are. So let's just take an example. I'm going to take here, and this is, I'm going to take the sale of Elliot Anderson from Newcastle United to Forest. So Elliot Anderson, promising young player at Newcastle, he was sold to Nottingham Forest for £30 million. Cracking player.
Yeah.
Now, if Newcastle has an option to buy him back in a year, if I was Nottingham Forest, I would be fairly peeved because he's come on. He's now an England player.
Yeah.
His market value is probably 60 or 70 million. So why should Nottingham Forest sell him back to Newcastle for 30? So we'd have to take a look at the small print, and if there was an option for Newcastle to effectively to call the deal, where they are in a position whereby if they want to effectively recall him, what's the difference between that and a loan? Because unless his value goes down, I think there would be an issue. So yes, this would work in theory, Kamot. So if I was operating within an MCO environment, I'd be doing this all the time to shift the profits around from club to club, and it's within the rules. So for two clubs that have got nothing to do with one another, then my concern would be if the player's market value goes up, why should the new club sell the player at a discount on the market price? So I think that's where the issue is. Now, again, we have seen some complications. There was talk earlier this summer about Liverpool having Harvey Elliott up for sale. And according to the media, and I don't know what Liverpool's internal discussions with other clubs are, it was as follows. If Liverpool sold Harvey Elliott, they had a buyback clause for 40 million, but they would have a first refusal to buy him back for whatever he was sold for. Or if they sold him completely without complications, they could sell him for 50 million, and then whoever bought him could sell him in due course for whatever fee that they got. So we are seeing an increasing proportion of deals are with sell-on for fees or buyback clauses or options and obligations and so on, because we are now moving into the realm of football players' contracts being seen as multi-million pound assets, and therefore the creative accountants and the creative lawyers who are keeping within the rules are coming up with increasingly wacky schemes.
So two things, Kieran, just to clarify that we are within the rules here, and Kamot says, so if that scenario were to happen, say between Newcastle and Forest, and regardless of how much it improves, so say Newcastle did buy the player back after a year for that amount, the Premier League or the independent regulator would have no problem with that at all. It's perfectly within the current rules.
Yeah, well, so first of all, it's completely outside of the realm
of the regulator.
Of the regulator. And I think one of the things that the regulator needs to get across when we get to the start of November is this is what we can do and this is what we can't do. We don't want to be interfering in football, A, because it gets complicated, and B, there then becomes a danger that you're in breach of the FIFA statute and the UEFA statute in terms of government interference in football. Right. But as far as being within the Premier League rules, I think we're probably just about within. My only issue here is that if I was Club B, why would I go along with it?
Yeah, sure.
But if Club B is a friendly club, then there's an issue. There's no problem.
The other issue isn't necessarily financial, Kieran, except sort of tangentially, but the Harvey Elliott situation with Liverpool and Villa, and as you say, increasingly we're seeing deals that have ifs, buts, and maybes added onto them. And what that led to, I think yesterday was Harvey Elliott's first start for Villa. He's been on the bench, I think, previously. And that leads to ludicrous conspiracy theories, which ignore the fact that Harvey Elliott may not be fully fit or may have had a bit of a tweak or maybe getting used to Villa's playing methods. Instead, everyone goes, Emery doesn't want to play him. Villa don't want to play him because it's going to trigger some kind of clause in the contract, which is presumably ludicrous. But the more of these deals you have, the more of those conspiracy theories will follow them, won't they?
That's absolutely correct. I think sometimes as fans, perhaps we do have too much time on our hands, and therefore, and in a world where truth and factual accuracy are not held in high regard anymore, decisions are being made on a feelings basis rather than a factual basis. You can understand why there is this feeling. When I hear fans chanting about the Premier League being corrupt, and that's what was happening at Stamford Bridge on Saturday, I 100% disagree.
Yeah.
And
it's ludicrous. It's UEFA that's corrupt, Kieran. We know that. It's not the Premier League's fine.
Yes, and Simon Hooper will probably admit that he didn't perhaps have his best performance, but
he didn't. Yeah.
But people, here's the thing: I've yet to meet the perfect person.
Yeah.
I've got an almost perfect wife.
I'm glad you made that caveat, Kieran. Well done.
But I've yet to meet a perfect person. I've yet to meet a person that doesn't make mistakes, and referees are amongst them. As much as I was having a bit of a grumble, and I'm normally the person that will defend referees more than anybody else, as you know.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
I don't think the referee at Newcastle had covered himself in glory either yesterday, but I suspect, Kieran, if I was sitting in the Paulson's Arms and somebody came in and said, I'd like to introduce you to the perfect person, I think after 5 minutes I'd probably be going, can you take the perfect person out? It's just it's really dull. Talking of truth and factual accuracy, Kieran, we do have a question about Donald Trump, or a news story about Donald Trump coming up on Thursday, which is one of the more bizarre news stories we've had to cover, but it's a football finance story, so we will. Thank you to everyone who has joined the Price of Football Club. If you'd like to join that club too and get every episode a day earlier than anyone else, ad-free listening, and invite to our monthly Q&A session, bonus episodes and more, go to our website, priceoffootball.com, and you'll also be able to get an interview a day early, which we're about to do this afternoon with the owner of Farnham Town, which is a fantastic success story. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and you can find us on YouTube. I'm not going to call it XQ. I've decided that's the only thing I can do to protest against
sticking it to the man.
Basically, yeah, it's not the rim. He won't even. He could have 150,000 other pins stuck in him on his acupuncture day. He won't notice this one, but it makes me feel slightly better about myself. And you can find us on YouTube if you'd like to buy one of our books or even a Price of Football t-shirt. You can find all the details on our website, priceoffootball.com. We'll be back on Thursday with that news pod, which has already got some really interesting stories, unless you're a Sheffield Wednesday fan, I'm afraid. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you as always, folks, for keeping in contact and keeping us on the straight and narrow when we stray. A lot of people including Finley.
His timing is impeccable. That's a perfect let me out and bark, that isn't it?
Yes.
The house is under attack.
And he knows the difference between Kevin the postman's footprints on the gravel than anybody else, because if it's the next door neighbour, not a noise.
That was a Freudian slip there, Kevin the footman. You're letting some light into the world of Kieran Maguire.
There's a variety of ways you can support the show, and one of those is to be a club member, and we have great fun with our club member. And if you don't want the adverts, and if you want to get the information just a little wee bit earlier, that's one way of doing so. And it's only £3.99 a month, or £39.99 for a full year's worth of additional bonhomie. But there's another way that you can support the show, and that's to give us a review. And it helps in terms of algorithms. It helps in terms of keeping our credibility with Apple and the other podcast people. Doesn't matter what you say. You could even say you would rather have the show presented by Shane Lowry. God bless him. I'm not a golf fan, but I was starting to panic last night. And Ross Noble. And I think that would be quite a surreal experience, but I would certainly take it. And just one other thing, folks. In a couple of weeks' time, we are going to Belfast. We are giving a live show. We've got the president of the Irish Football Association as one of our guests. And I know I've been contacted by some people connected running courses, sort of sports courses. Is there anything we can do? And we're able to give a 50% discount for all students and staff for anybody that's involved with the course. So if you just go to Eventbrite and if you put in, I think it's student 50 as your discount code, and you'll get 50% off. And we look forward to seeing you at the stadium in a couple of weeks.
We do. Can't wait. I haven't been to Belfast for a few years, so it's always a favourite place to visit. I'm like you, Kieran. I'm not the biggest golf fan, but you can't help but get swept up with the Ryder Cup, especially with the, so you say, boorish behaviour of some of their fans, making you want Europe to win even more. So yesterday I thought this is a perfect Sunday. If this was October, it'd be even more perfect. But I just thought we got Palace have won. We got decent football on the telly. I've been really getting into the NFL this season. We've got the Ryder Cup, and literally, you think within the first hour of the Ryder Cup, we'll have won this. You can just enjoy it, and then you just can't go. Hang on a second. I kept having to turn it off. I think I'm jinxing this. But then, as you say, good old Shane, who doesn't look like a professional athlete, I have to say. But that was sport. It's fine. Him and Ross Noble, all I would say about that is it would be a long pod.
Yes.
Because conversations with Ross are very similar to going to Ross gig. He is one of the nicest blokes you can meet.
Oh, fantastic.
He's absolutely delightful. And he's also one of the rare comedians who is as funny off stage as he is on stage, except you just find yourself going, hang on a second, where were we? Was it one, was it one sugar, did you say? Sorry, Ross. He's a delightful bloke. He really is. And as I'm sure Shane there is. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.